Most people who are saving for retirement are saving toward a feeling rather than a number. The feeling is something like financial security, the sense that there is enough, that the account is large enough, that the trajectory is good enough, that working is a choice rather than a requirement. The feeling is real and worth pursuing. It is also imprecise in a way that makes it unreliable as a planning target. Because the feeling of enough arrives at different account balances for different people, and at different moments for the same person depending on what week it is and what the market has done recently. The person saving toward a feeling does not know when they will reach it. They cannot calculate how far away they are. They cannot adjust their savings rate, their timeline, or their spending to bring it closer in a way that is mathematically grounded. They are saving in the direction of something they cannot measure, which means they cannot know when they have arrived. The person saving toward a number knows exactly how far away they are. They know what monthly contribution closes the gap by a specific amount. They know what spending reduction accelerates the timeline by a specific number of years. They know, with a precision that the feeling cannot provide, when the account balance crosses the threshold at which work becomes optional. Not probably optional, not emotionally optional, but mathematically optional in the specific sense that the account can sustain their spending indefinitely without ever being refilled from a paycheck. That threshold has a name. It has a formula. It is the single most important number in your financial life, and the majority of people who have been saving for decades have never calculated it. The number is your retirement number, the specific portfolio value at which your invested assets generate enough annual return to cover your annual expenses indefinitely, requiring no additional contributions from employment income to sustain themselves. It is not a number anyone can give you in a general sense because it depends on one piece of information that is specific to your life and that only you can provide: your annual spending. Everything else in the calculation is derived from that single input, using a formula that 4 decades of retirement research has refined to a level of practical reliability that makes it the foundation of virtually every serious retirement planning framework in use today. The formula is called the 4% rule, and its origin is more rigorous than its simplicity suggests. In 1994, financial planner William Bengen published a study in the Journal of Financial Planning that asked a specific question. What is the maximum percentage of an investment portfolio that a retiree can withdraw annually, adjusted each year for inflation, and have a high probability of the portfolio surviving for 30 years? Bengen analyzed historical market return data going back to 1926, 68 years of equity and bond returns, including the Great Depression, World War II, the stagflation of the 1970s, and every market cycle in between, and found that a portfolio invested in a mix of stocks and bonds could sustain a 4% annual withdrawal rate, adjusted for inflation, across virtually every historical 30-year retirement period. The portfolio did not run out in any historical 30-year sequence when the withdrawal rate was 4%. The finding was replicated and extended by the Trinity University study in 1998, which tested the same framework across different asset allocations and confirmed that a 4% withdrawal rate from a diversified portfolio produced a 95 to 100% success rate across all 30-year historical periods tested. The 4% rule is not a guarantee. It is a historically grounded probability, the withdrawal rate that survived every 30-year period the historical record contains, with asset allocation and spending discipline as the conditions of its application. The rule produces a number through the simplest arithmetic in personal finance. Your annual spending divided by 0.04 equals your retirement number. $12,000 per year in spending requires $300,000. $24,000 per year requires $600,000. $40,000 per year requires $1 million. $60,000 per year requires $1,500,000. $80,000 per year requires $2 million. The rule can also be expressed as its inverse, the 25x rule, which states that your retirement number is 25 times your annual spending. Multiply what you spend in a year by 25, and you have the portfolio value at which work is mathematically optional. The calculation takes approximately 90 seconds and produces a number that most people who have been saving for decades have not computed and do not have written anywhere. Sit with the implications of that for a moment. The most important threshold in your entire financial life, the specific portfolio value at which employment becomes a choice rather than a requirement, is derivable in 90 seconds from one number you already know. And most people who are actively saving for it have never made the calculation. They know approximately what they have. They do not know how it compares to what they need. They are building toward a destination without knowing the distance. The number is the distance. Knowing it changes everything about how you make decisions in the years before you reach it. Let me show you what knowing the number changes specifically for a real household, because the abstract argument for knowing the number is less compelling than the concrete demonstration of what it enables. Take a 38-year-old woman named Catherine in Portland. She earns $91,000. She saves roughly 12% of her gross income, about $10,920 per year, distributed across a 401k, a Roth IRA she maxes most years, and a small taxable brokerage account. Her combined investment portfolio is $187,000. She thinks about retirement periodically, feels good about the fact that she is saving, feels uncertain about whether she is saving enough, and has a vague target of somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million, based on nothing more specific than having read those figures in articles about retirement savings at some point in the last 5 years. She does not know her annual spending with precision. She has never run the 4% rule calculation for her household. She does not know her retirement number. On a Sunday afternoon, Catherine spends 45 minutes doing 3 calculations she has never done before. The first calculation is her actual annual spending. Not her income, not her budget, but what she actually spends, extracted from 12 months of bank statements and credit card records. The number is $52,400. She did not know this exactly. She had estimated $45,000. The $7,400 gap between her estimate and her actual spending is not unusual. LIMRA's 2024 Consumer Spending Survey found that the median American underestimates their annual spending by approximately 18%, which is consistent with Catherine's experience, and with the documented tendency to recall and estimate planned spending, rather than actual spending when asked to self-report. The second calculation is her retirement number. $52,400 divided by 0.04 equals $1,310,000. Not $1.5 to $2 million. $1,310,000. Her specific retirement number, derived from her specific spending, is $190,000 to $690,000 lower than the range she had been carrying in her head. She is closer to her goal than she thought. Not because her savings rate has been higher than she realized, but because the goal she had been estimating was not the goal derived from her actual life. The third calculation is her current trajectory. Her $187,000 portfolio, growing at 8% annually with $10,920 in additional annual contributions, reaches $1,310,000 at approximately age 54, 16 years from now. She had assumed retirement at 65. Her trajectory, on her current numbers, reaches her specific retirement number 11 years earlier than her default assumption. The 45 minutes Catherine spent on those 3 calculations did not change her savings rate. They did not change her investments. They did not change anything about the financial actions she takes from week to week. What they changed is her relationship to those actions, the specific feeling of whether they are sufficient, whether they are building towards something knowable, whether the sacrifice they require is calibrated correctly to the goal they are supposed to achieve. Before the calculation, Catherine was saving toward a feeling. After it, she is saving toward $1,310,000, a number she can track, a distance she can measure, a target she can adjust toward if her spending changes, or her savings capacity changes, or her timeline preference changes. The number made the goal concrete. The concrete goal made the progress measurable. The measurable progress produces a fundamentally different relationship with saving than the unmeasurable progress toward a feeling. Now run the number forward from Catherine's current position with 3 different decisions. Because the power of knowing the retirement number is not only that it tells you where you are relative to where you need to be, but that it quantifies the impact of specific financial decisions on the timeline in years, which is a unit of measurement that makes abstract financial trade-offs feel real in a way that dollar amounts often do not. Decision 1. Catherine increases her savings rate from 12% to 18% of gross income, an additional $5,460 per year from reducing discretionary spending. Her trajectory reaches $1,310,000 at approximately age 51, 3 years earlier than the current trajectory. 3 years of additional freedom, 3 years in which work is optional rather than required, purchased by a specific increase in savings rate. The value of those 3 years is not only the income Catherine would have earned during them, it is the full economic and personal value of 3 years in which she allocates her time according to her preferences rather than her employer's requirements. Some people would not trade those 3 years for the spending reduction required to capture them. Some people would trade it in an instant. The number makes the trade-off legible in a way that save more never does. Decision 2. Catherine discovers through the spending analysis that $8,200 of her annual $52,400 spending is concentrated in 2 categories, dining out and subscription services, that she could reduce by 40% with changes she rates as moderate inconvenience rather than significant sacrifice. The $3,280 annual reduction in spending does 2 things simultaneously. It increases her annual savings capacity by $3,280, and it reduces her retirement number by $82,000, from $1,310,000 to $1,228,000, because the annual spending that determines the target number is now lower. The double effect of a spending reduction, simultaneously accelerating savings accumulation and reducing the target, means that every dollar of sustainable spending reduction is worth more than twice its face value to the retirement timeline. Catherine's trajectory to the revised $1,228,000 target reaches completion at approximately age 49, not 54, not 51, 49. From a $3,280 annual spending reduction in 2 categories she assessed as moderate inconvenience. The number made this calculation possible. The calculation produced a timeline consequence, 5 fewer working years, that Catherine can evaluate against the cost of the spending reduction in terms she actually understands. Decision 3. Catherine decides to understand the geographic component of her retirement number. Her $52,400 annual spending is Portland, Oregon spending, a high cost of living city where her housing, which represents approximately $19,200 of her annual spend, reflects a market among the most expensive in the Pacific Northwest. She models what her annual spending would be in Boise, Idaho, 2 hours away, different job market, different social network, but meaningfully lower housing costs, and estimates her equivalent lifestyle at $39,800 per year. Her retirement number in Boise is $39,800 divided by 0.04, which equals $995,000. Her current trajectory reaches $995,000 at approximately age 47. Not 54, not 51, not 49, 47. From the same $187,000 portfolio, the same savings rate, the same market returns. From a single location decision that changes the denominator of the calculation she had never previously run. These 3 scenarios are not presented as prescriptions. Catherine might reject all of them, stay in Portland, maintain current spending, keep the 12% savings rate, and retire at 54 as her current trajectory projects, which is still 11 years earlier than her default assumption of 65. The point is not that any particular optimization is worth the life change required to achieve it. The point is that without the number, none of these trade-offs are visible. The person who does not know their retirement number cannot see that a $3,280 spending reduction in 2 categories buys 5 working years of freedom. They cannot see that a location change shifts the target by $315,000 and the timeline by 7 years. They cannot evaluate the trade-off because they do not have the units in which the trade-off is most meaningfully measured. The number gives them the units. The 4% rule has limitations that an honest treatment of it requires naming. The original Bengen study used 30-year retirement periods, which assumes retirement at 65 and death at 95, a planning horizon that is appropriate for traditional retirement, but that understates the portfolio longevity requirement for anyone considering early retirement. A retirement at 50 requires a 50-year portfolio horizon, not 30, and the historical success rate of a 4% withdrawal rate across 50-year periods is lower than across 30-year periods, meaningfully so, according to the extended analyses that researchers including Wade Pfau and Michael Kitces have conducted. For investors planning for retirement timelines longer than 30 years, a withdrawal rate of 3 to 3.5% produces substantially better historical success rates, which means a retirement number of 28 to 33 times annual spending rather than 25 times. The person planning to retire at 50 on $52,400 per year should use $52,400 times 28, approximately $1,467,000, as their planning target rather than $1,310,000. And the 7-year difference in timeline that Catherine's geographic arbitrage calculation produced narrows when the more conservative withdrawal rate is applied. The second limitation is that the 4% rule was developed for portfolios invested in a mix of stocks and bonds, typically a 50 to 75% stock allocation. And the rule's historical success rate depends on maintaining that allocation through market downturns, rather than shifting to cash or bonds during periods of volatility. The investor who reaches their retirement number and then shifts the entire portfolio to cash upon retirement, or who reduces equity exposure to near zero in response to a market decline in year 2 of retirement, is not applying the tool correctly and should not expect the tool's historical success rates to apply to their situation. The rule is not a static permission slip. It is a dynamic framework whose validity depends on ongoing investment discipline that the original research assumed, but that real retiree behavior frequently does not sustain. The third limitation is sequence of returns risk, the specific vulnerability of the early retirement years to poor market performance. A retiree who withdraws 4% from a portfolio in a year when the market declines 30% is withdrawing from a meaningfully smaller base than the rule anticipated, and the combination of withdrawals and market decline in the early retirement years can deplete the portfolio to a level from which even subsequent strong market returns cannot fully recover. This risk is real, documented, and manageable through flexible spending, reducing withdrawals in bad years, maintaining a cash buffer of 1 to 2 years of expenses to avoid selling equities in depressed markets, and considering part-time or freelance income in the early retirement years to reduce portfolio dependence during the vulnerable early period. The sequence risk is not an argument against the 4% rule. It is an argument for the specific risk management practices that make the rule's historical success rates applicable to real retirement decisions. The broader limitation, the one that the financial planning industry sometimes understates in the interest of not making the framework seem complicated, is that the 4% rule is a starting point for retirement planning, not a final answer. The starting point is immensely valuable because it gives the saver a specific, calculable, annually updatable target that makes the saving journey concrete rather than abstract. The final answer requires the layering in of the specific factors that make each household situation different. Tax treatment of withdrawals from different account types, Social Security income timing, pension income if present, health insurance costs before Medicare eligibility, legacy and estate planning goals, and the specific spending flexibility that distinguishes a household that can meaningfully reduce spending in bad market years from one whose spending is largely fixed by obligations. These factors adjust the number. They do not eliminate it. The adjusted number is more accurate than the unadjusted number, and the unadjusted number is vastly more accurate than no number, which is the current planning instrument for the majority of Americans who are saving toward a feeling. The question that most changes what you do this week is not how to invest or what account to use or what savings rate is optimal. The question is, do you know your number? Your specific, calculated, spending-derived retirement number? And do you know how your current portfolio compares to it? Because the gap between those two figures, expressed in dollars, tells you exactly how much compounding time and contribution you need to close it. And the gap expressed in years, how long at your current savings rate and expected return before your portfolio crosses the threshold, tells you something more important than any individual financial decision you will make this year. It tells you whether the timeline you are living toward is the timeline you are building toward, or whether the default trajectory of your current choices is carrying you somewhere different from where you intended to arrive. Catherine is recalculating her number tonight. Not because anything changed in her finances between Sunday and tonight, because she realized, in the 45 minutes it took to run the 3 calculations, that she had been making financial decisions for 15 years without knowing the destination they were pointed toward, and that knowing the destination changes not what you save, but why you save. Not the account balance, but what the account balance means. Not the sacrifice, but the proportion of the sacrifice to the specific future it is purchasing. She is 38. Her number is $1,310,000. Her current portfolio is $187,000. Her current trajectory reaches the number at 54. The 16 years between where she is and where the number is are 16 years she can see now, measure now, optimize now, with a precision that the feeling of enough was never able to provide. And the optimization, if she makes any of it, will be made not because a trap was identified and escaped, but because a destination was named, and the route to it became, for the first time, exactly as.